Well, this may shock some of you, but we are a racist country. Whichever way you care to look at it, we do have racist elements in our country which need to be called out. And this has been done so recently by Laura Tingle. Now, I want to let you know that I know why we are a racist country. Number one, because the voice referendum was defeated and that it was an opportunity to acknowledge the racism that has occurred in this country and for us as a community to do something about it and improve the conditions and well-being of Indigenous people. But we chose not to do that because we wanted to believe that we were kind of pure, kind of saintly, kind of, I don't know, this Christian narrative that people want to put out there, I guess. But we are racist. Now, that doesn't mean we're all racist. I've got lots of friends who aren't, and there are lots of people who are fighting against racism in this country as I do. But I know that we're racist because I know that there'll be comments that we might be made to my YouTube channel with regard to this particular video, which will indicate that you bastard, are racist. There's no disputing it. You'll be making comments about Indigenous people and the Indigenous industry, and you'll be making comments about how important it is just to be Australian. We're all Australian, you know, that no matter where we come from, we're an inclusive society and so on. But at the same time, excluding Indigenous people, the First Nations people, from that discussion. That's what you'll do. I know you will, so don't disappoint me. Whenever you make a comment down below, just remember I'll be looking at it and I'll be making a comment back because I will not tolerate, cannot tolerate, racism in any form. And so when Laura Tingle came out and said this on the weekend, I felt kind of relieved, in fact, that someone had called it out for what it is and that it's getting the publicity that it needs. And so I want to give some context around this, and I'll show you an article from the Sydney Morning Herald that does explain this in just a moment. But the reality is that politicians don't call it out because they're afraid of losing votes. And journalists generally don't call it out because they're afraid of being called bias. And so, and certainly people at Sky News and on the right don't call it out because they're racists. So it is a relief and it's kind of exciting that this has got the publicity that it has, particularly in Reconciliation Week, which is what, this week. So, and it's an effort to have this, we're kind of reluctant to have this conversation, that there's something in us that prevents us from admitting our own deficits, and it isn't, as I'll say this again, it isn't about saying that we're all racists or that the majority of us are racists. And I'm not saying that either. But I am saying that there are racial tendencies that prevent the growth of Indigenous people in this country. And those views are held often, if not always, well, often, because there are some Indigenous people, such as Mundine and Price and others, who will argue differently because they have their own political agenda they want to follow and because they want to align themselves with the right. So they won't argue this for their own people because they're cowards. But certainly having someone come out like Laura Tingle and talk about this issue, as she did at Writers' Week in Sydney over the weekend, is an indication that someone has the guts, the courage to talk about this in a meaningful way, as Laura has. So in this article, it's titled ABC's Laura Tingle Under Fire After Racist Country Comments. Now, one of the reasons why she's really under fire is because everybody on the right wants to have a go at the ABC, and it's almost like no one at the ABC can be an independent thinker. And, you know, the right criticises the left when they see a leftist view being commented, and the right criticises the left criticises the right, and the right in particular, or the left, I should say, in particular, get distressed about David Speers because they see him as being, as being a little bit further right than what they want. I don't see that in David personally, and I watch insiders, but I don't see any of those biases that obviously other people see. So I'm not suggesting they're not there, I'm just saying I don't see them. But in the case of Laura, she was stating the blinking obvious, and I think this needs to be called out for what it is. So 7:30, Laura Tingle has come under fire for comments she made at a Sydney Writers' Festival event at which she reportedly criticised opposition leader Peter Dutton and declared Australia a racist country. And it's almost like, how dare anybody ever state that we're, what are we then? If we're not this racist country, are we this all-inclusive, all-encompassing country that has no degree of racism or anti-Semitism or bullying or domestic violence? Or, we need to call this shit out when it is evident that it is dominant in our society. And I think the Voice campaign demonstrated that very fact, and the comments in my YouTube channel, also verify that very fact. We are a racist country, let's face it. We always have been, and it's very depressing. And she's right, and I share her depression. It's right, and it should not be happening, but it is. Tingle reportedly told the audience on Sunday at Sydney's Carriage Works. Tingle criticised Dutton, saying she couldn't recall a leader of a major political party to be saying everything that is going wrong in this country is because of migrants. And this is the issue. The issue is that if we paint the other as being from a different culture, different religious background, different coloured skin from white, then we're breeding racism. And by defining migrants as being the other and being the problem in terms of housing, because we're not having enough housing because we've got these migrants, or we've got all these Chinese students coming in from China, whatever it is, we're painting those people as being an undesirable colour. And this is where I think racism particularly takes its hold in this country. She said that after listening to Dutton's budget reply speech earlier this month, in which he discussed migration and housing issues, she had this sudden flash of people turning up to try and rent a property or at an auction, and they look a bit different. Whatever you define different as. Oh, yeah. And that basically Dutton, has given them licence to be abused in any circumstances where people feel like they're missing out. And sometimes I think that missing out is about being overrun by. So there's this sense of white exceptionalism, that white nationalism, if you like, which is destroying or will destroy a country, which will cause one side to be fighting against another. Plenty of historical accounts of that happening, I can tell you. So there'll be plenty of evidence that historically that ends badly. And that's kind of like the path that we're heading on if we don't confront it. Now, it doesn't mean that we're going to change people's minds. This conversation I'm having, people comment about, who are you, Tony? What are you doing? You're a dick, you're a wanker. I get all that sort of comment. And that's fine. Comment you like. None of that hurts me. It just motivates me to post more. But in this particular case, I think this is an issue that we ought to start discussing. All I'm saying is that if you want to discuss it with me and you're demonstrating racist tendencies, I'll tell you to bugger off, because I'm not going to actually engage with you unless you're actually prepared to accept the fact, one simple fact, that there is perhaps, I'll reframe that. People will not look inside themselves and look for their racist tendencies. I know that growing up in a conservative society that I grew up in, I had them. And I had homophobic tendencies. I had a lot of things that to this day make me feel very uncomfortable to think that I harboured those views. Now, I had to go through a lengthy process to discover all that stuff and to get rid of it. But there are many people, I think, out there who don't bother, who think that this is the way we are, this is who I am, I don't need to change any of those views. If I change those views, I'll become a completely different person, unrecognisable. People won't know who I am. Look, man, if you decide to become and accept a little bit of decency and humility, then that's not going to harm anybody and it's going to do you the world of good. The problem that we have is that not enough people are prepared to look internally enough to discover parts of them which just should not be there, which are toxic, which will erode certain parts of your body away, basically. So it goes on to say, the ABC editorial standard states, and this is kind of like, question is Laura going to be beaten up around this by the ABC? Or is she going to allow to speak as an independent individual about views that she thinks are important? I hope the latter. Impartiality is a fundamental standard. It is central to its public service purpose and to its reputation as a credible and trustworthy broadcaster. Now, if Tingle's interviewing somebody and she is impartial in the interview and she asks this, reasonable questions. I mean, can you say that Sarah Ferguson, for example, is impartial? So, I hate to be sitting in front of Sarah Ferguson at any particular time because she'll rip you apart. She's far from impartial. She's got her agenda and she wants to follow through on that agenda. I've often found Laura far more gentle and far more inquisitory in a respectful way than I certainly do Sarah Ferguson. So, and it's about the role she plays. So if she plays this role of being a reporter and an interviewer, which is what she's paid to do with the ABC, and that role is respectful and is inquiring of others, then that's cool. That's what she should be doing. In this instance, she was giving a speech or addressing, she was on a panel at a writers' conference talking about her views. So is it fair to say that someone like Laura or anybody else hasn't got the right to be able to express their views? I object a lot to what I hear on Sky News, Andrew Bolt, Kelly, the whole crew, because I think their views are antithetical to what I believe. But they're entitled to their views. I don't object to them having a view. I object to the types of things that they talk about that colour the community and that propagate stuff like racism. That's what I object to. But so, if Laura's conducting her job appropriately, then that should not be a problem. The ABC should not be worried about it. The question is, should people have personal views when they're talking about issues such as racism? And are they allowed to say, I am disappointed that there's so much racism in this country? And I agree with Laura. I think that there is, and that we need to find a way to be able to deal with it. It's an epidemic and it's hateful, and it's like anti-Semitism needs to be eradicated. Any anti-Muslim beliefs need to be eradicated, and so on. Any belief that diminishes another group needs to be destroyed. So subscribe to my channel, ring the bell for further comments, or just ring the bell, but make comments down below if you like. I'll try to get to as many as I can. Just try not to make them as abusive as some of them have been. And I'll get back to you later. In the meantime, take care, look after yourselves, and more importantly, be safe.